Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religions. In fact, the end of superstition and the beginning of truth. I think our ancestors are trying to tell us the truth. I wish more of us would accept it. And tonight, unfortunately, we are missing one certain Steve, but we did happen to have a Mac, and we went live because I've just disappointed you guys so many times. Last week, completely not Mac or Steve's fault. Not their fault. I got confused about time zones, as does happen with this brain that I have, and wanted to start the show 2 hours later than it was scheduled because reasons. But moving on from there, my apologies to Mac. I'm sorry, my apologies to Steve, and my apologies to anyone who greatly appreciates Steve and will miss him this episode. I will miss him this episode as well. But just so that we have some kind of predictability, we're gonna do a show with just Mac, just the same. Not to disrespect Steve whatsoever. And Mac, let's see. Do you want to talk about any personal stuff? Are you doing anything on your YouTube channel? Is there anything going on like that, or do you just want to jump right into this, or how are we doing this?
Yeah, no, my YouTube channel, I've been thinking about trying to put something up, but my engagements with you are demanding enough, I think, for now anyway. So I hung out with your sister a couple of times too on her live stream, which was really fun in a different way, a lot more chaotic way, but a lot of fun, very stimulating. So
she's an interesting and very nice person. I like her a lot.
She's great. She really is. Yeah, really cool family so far that I've met. Anyway, let's just...
everyone gets the oddball. We've got one that isn't like us.
Right.
He's not like the rest of us. Most people don't like him, actually, but you got to have a contrast and compare somewhere in there, I guess. All right, So we were talking before the show, and you proposed an idea. Would you propose it again where everyone can hear?
Yeah, sure. So there's this there's a message within what Richard talks about a very an impending finale to our story, and a literal interpretation of not just Revelation, but all of the scripture that he considers prophetic. And we touched on that quickly before we went live, but then we moved quickly into some. Richard started to propose that there's evidence that governments are aware that this crisis, or at least they're aware of an aspect of this crisis being imminent, and so they're making preparations that we can look at and sort of maybe understand through that more clearly. Or at least justify more of the claims Richard makes about the Bible and how prophecy is going to play out.
So I'm going to make some assertions on that topic, and I hope it'll lead to natural questions by Welcome Robert Daniels and by you, Mac. And hopefully we can keep this going that way and disseminate some of this information. Now, my hope is the following. My hope is that you will go and look into whatever I say and do your absolute best to disprove it. Because anyone within their biases can find some little bit of information to make them feel like they're right.
Right.
But to know that you're right, you must go and do your best to prove that you are wrong, and really make an honest effort in that direction. So that's my hope, is that you'll do that. And in doing that, what will happen with people is when they can't disprove it, they'll accept it. Okay, they'll have shown themselves that it's true, and that's much more important than anything I can say. And just the privilege of suggesting these ideas for people to look into is what I consider to be a devotion of humility and love to all of you who should ever watch this. Okay, so here's my first assertion. My first assertion is that my study within the reading frame I've been given for the Bible and other spiritual stories has led me down a course of study that, first of all, resulted in no dead ends. Now, that alone is shocking. You'd expect that if you were investigating things, sometimes you'd look in the wrong place. because you don't really know what you're looking for. That happened 0 times. I mean, absolutely 0 times. That I looked for something that I thought the Bible was saying, and I looked in reality and it wasn't there. That has happened never. Wow. It's been there every time. What I'm specifically talking about is the first thing that a conscious, that is not in a coma, human being would notice about the earth itself and about their personal situation that would be a sign to them that the end times have definitely started. Okay.
Right.
And this is always the first event in all of the ancient religions. The first significant worldwide event is always the same. It's the planet Kachina. It's Agni. It's the story of the god Vulcan. It's the quaking of the earth that spits hail and fire mingle with blood, causing a cloud that shadows 1/3 of the earth. That one's the Bible. And it's always the same story, that there is this event that that people will intrinsically know about from first-person experience, where the whole of the earth shakes. It spits hail of fire. In other words, things falling from the sky that are burning.
Right.
So in order for it to fall from the sky, it has to come from outside of the solar system, or it has to be spit up off of the earth. It has to be one of those situations. And that it'll also cause a cloud that enshrouds 1/3 of the earth at one time. Well, that's a whole bunch of cloud. Okay. And the kind of impact that would be an extraterrestrial object impacting the earth to cause that amount of smoke in the atmosphere would also, the impact would be such that it would kill us. And all of us would die pretty darned quick from something like that. So the only thing that I know of that we could survive, and the story says we do survive, is something that would shake the earth, that spits hail and fire, that would be mingled with blood. Some will die, and cause a cloud that would shadow 1/3 of the earth, is a super volcano. A normal volcano just would not shake the whole earth. Volcanoes erupt all the time. I've never felt one. Not once in my whole life have I felt a volcano erupting. So it would have to be a volcano of huge magnitude in order for the whole earth to shake, and every person on it alert, feel it. Okay, so that set me on a course of study where I would look into large volcanoes. Okay, and at the time when I first read this in the text, I didn't know the term supervolcano at all. And I didn't know that there was one in North America that is a national park, Yellowstone National Park.
Right.
And I didn't know that the United States Geological Survey and the University of Utah and some other entities, including the Corps of Engineers, have been doing a lot of testing on Yellowstone since about 1980. I didn't know that either. And I didn't know that we built the world's largest supercomputer near and off of Yellowstone and wired it directly to the park. And I didn't know that the USGS, in coordination with the other entities, put many, many, many more seismograms, that's the machine that produces a seismograph, all over that tri-state area, Utah, Idaho, and Wyoming. But I'd like to make an assertion, and hopefully that will trigger some questions in your mind, and we can do some follow-up stuff. Okay. So here's the assertion: not the great quaking of the earth, but the quaking of the earth. There's a worse one later. The quaking of the earth is a super volcano, and the most likely super volcano, which our governments, the Northern Hemisphere's governments, have been preparing for the eruption of. That the prophecy is actually talking about Yellowstone erupting.
Are there other candidates? Are there other supervolcanoes?
There are 9 other supervolcanoes on this planet, all of them under the ocean.
Okay.
Now, could one of them erupt and shake the earth? Yes. Would it cause a cloud of any kind? No. The water would filter out the any exhaust from that, and it's just pollution in the ocean.
Well, one thought that I had right away was that yesterday we had in our area, we had this strange rhythmic waves of thunderstorms over our area. And the weather channel said that it was because it was a direct result of pressure from the Oregon wildfires, that this whole weather front was from that. So it seems like probably it wouldn't take much to create a third of the world's clouds. What was you probably have looked into Krakatoa along this line, right? That's the last historical like world darkening eruption. I think it was about a third of the world, right? I don't really remember, but it was enough, and for enough time that there was famine and real problems because of the eruption. And it's not a super volcano, I don't think either.
No,
pretty sure it's still active. Yeah. So
yeah,
the cloud thing is pretty easy to generate, I think, is one of the thoughts that I had. I mean, relatively easy. Wouldn't necessarily require a super volcano. Shaking the earth, though, that the whole earth.
What if I said that the cloud was dark as sackcloth of hair?
It's not a familiar metaphor for me, so I have to try to imagine what that would look like.
Well, you take horse mane, manes from animals, farm animals.
Sure.
And you make yarn out of that, and then you weave that into a gunny sack or.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's why they called it sackcloth.
Ah.
It's so rough you wouldn't wear it.
Right. Definitely not.
But it's super tough too, and you almost can't. So it's like the idea of like sort of like burlap, only we make burlap not from horsehair.
Right. Yeah, it'd be very coarse.
So sackcloth of hair would be very thick and coarse, and maybe you could hold it up to a good bright day and see some light through it, but you wouldn't get much light through it.
Okay.
And welcome, Robert. I appreciate you guys dropping by, and also Ox. And Ox said hello to Mac. Yeah. Okay, so in order to be a cloud that thick, that at one time shadows 1/3 of the Earth, that's a lot. I mean, I don't think you could do that with our moisture level in our atmosphere. I think that wouldn't be accomplishable. You could do it locally, any given part of the Earth you could with the atmospheric moisture. But I think if you're going to do like 1/3 of the Earth literally at one time, I don't think that could be accomplished with clouds.
Right on. It's definitely something to look into. I have to agree, though, that for that prophecy to align with any phenomenon that we know of, that this is the best explanation. That's for sure. I find your comparison of the meteorite possibility very compelling. I think you're right about that. That would be an extinction event instead of
something that caused that much crap in the sky.
Yeah,
that would be an extinction level event impact, and like it would kill all of us. Almost none of us, or none of us would survive. And
right.
And then that's not within the prophecy that we all die off. That's not part of it. Although a lot of Christians would say yes and even hope for it, that almost everyone dies off except for their little tiny group. That's unfortunately for them, that's not part of the story.
Right.
Welcome the people who did not sign in and aren't commenting, which count for. Thank you very much for stopping by. I appreciate you, no matter who you might be. Okay, so you mentioned Krakatoa. Not so coincidentally, Krakatoa being somewhat of a known event and known magnitude, the USGS, in their estimation of a full eruption of Yellowstone National Park supervolcano, used Krakatoa as a graduating device, as a measuring device.
Okay.
To give you an idea of what Yellowstone would be, and they also used Mount St. Helens because it's something in our recent memory.
Right.
To give you some kind of an idea of a full eruption of Yellowstone at its fullest potential, it's approximately 40 Krakatoa or 200 Mount St. Helenses. if that even means something to you, and it's hard for it to mean something.
That's a ridiculous amount of power.
Yes.
Yeah. It's basically meaningless.
Yeah, it's almost unfathomable what that means. Another measuring device they used to try to like get the idea across to us was they said at a full eruption, and you can double check me on this. I think that I've said it enough, that I've practiced enough that I'm right about it.
Sure.
A 35-mile across pyroclastic pillar climbing to approximately 80,000 feet, that's above the jet stream, and or through the jet stream, which means the jet stream could carry it, where the pressure released is approximately 2,000 nuclear warhead per minute. I know, those are unfathomable too. I know. It's like, what does that mean?
Wow.
Try to imagine 2,000 Hiroshima bombs going off simultaneously per minute.
Yeah. Per minute.
Yeah, I mean,
that's so nuts. And that
peace
doesn't
and respect,
demolish the
Jesus
world?
is Lord. What's that?
That doesn't ruin the world? That doesn't break the planet in half? I mean, it must break the atmosphere or something.
People well, first of all, governments in the Northern Hemisphere are working in cahoots with each other because they have to. They don't have a choice. Yeah, okay, so Russia and China hated us. Whatever. They're in danger too. And we're all coming together. I can show you pictures of military equipment, recently produced military equipment that has both Chinese and other pieces have Russian instrumentation in them.
Huh.
Now that makes perfect sense. I could expound quite a bit on Jade Helm. That's jade like the stone, and helm like how you steer a boat. Jade Helm, and also its sister operation Maple Reserve, which was in Canada, where it looks like all of our mission non-essential equipment from the military that was stateside was transferred upwind of Yellowstone National Park.
Oh.
And if you look into Jade Helm, it was a bunch of scary stuff, and people freaked out. Nothing ever happened.
I remember hearing something about it. Yeah. Right.
And nothing ever happened. People freaked out over nothing. But then they never took the equipment back out of the Western states. It's still here. So the whole idea of over popularizing it and over promoting it made people like ignore it when nothing happened. So they didn't really pay attention that there are now armed guards and huge lots of Humvees, APCs, CPOGs, tanks, all kinds of stuff over here in the Western states being guarded by a minimalistic guard.
Huh.
So I think that's why they created this state is friendly, we're going to make that one blue, and Texas is unfriendly, we're going to make that one red, and New Mexico is neutral, we're going to say that's brown. And that's why they hyped all that up, is so people would get like kind of scared of the government and think there was some kind of a coup going on or something. And then when the coup didn't happen, they just ignore the fact that they never took the equipment back.
Right. Oh, that's wild.
Yeah. So if you looked into Jade Helm and Maple Reserve, you'd see what I was talking about. That was in 2015.
Right.
So it wasn't that long ago. And that's only one thing that they did in preparation for the imminent eruption of Yellowstone National Park. Let's see what Ox wrote here. Known to be a smarter dude. I heard if it blows that from the Mississippi River, let me imagine that, to the Pacific, and from Texas all the way up to Wyoming would be like the surface of the moon, with a crater in the center of it the size of Texas itself.
Wow.
I don't know that is true, Ox, but I don't think it's a ridiculous statement. If a person wanted to know our best science and our best estimates, according to the USGS and the University of Utah, what the results of a Yellowstone eruption would be like in a first-person perspective, go watch their feature-length film. That's right, the USGS made a feature-length film. Not very creatively, it's called Supervolcano, which is, they're talking about Yellowstone. They obviously are talking about Yellowstone. They mention Yellowstone several times throughout the film. The whole film's about Yellowstone. And the name of the film is Supervolcano. If you want to watch it, it's on YouTube for free, gratis, because they made a public announcement for you. Now, if you choose to not watch the public announcement, that's on you. Their estimation, and you can look up the USGS. The USGS made 4 maps by season of an estimation of the ash bed that would cover most of the United States. Not all of it, but most of it. And essentially, you're talking about 100 years of unusable 2/3 of the United States, including all of the breadbasket, and pretty much the area that Ox just described there. And some places kind of edging up into Canada, and off the coast in the bay. What's the name of that bay area around Texas all the way to Georgia? What's that called?
Gulf.
Yeah, the Gulf. That's the word I was looking for. And just missing the lower part of Florida in most of their maps. Now, I just compiled 4 maps in my brain and spoke them, but you can look up USGS proposed ash bed Yellowstone, and you'll find those maps, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. That, and they even have estimations of the depth of the ash across the United States all the way out to the New York coast. And the depth of the ash, most of it would collapse building roofs.
Wow.
So even if it survived the earthquake, it's not going to be a structure.
The ash is caustic too, isn't it? It's not friendly stuff.
Yes, it is known that after a volcanic eruption, moisture in the air mixing with the volcanic ash causes literal acid rain, and not the kind that just eats the wax off your car, but the kind that's actually caustic and causes a real problem, causing plant death, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. No frogs in your pond, stuff like that.
Right.
Right.
Silent Spring. Yeah, these maps are pretty terrifying.
Yeah, starting at something around 3 to 4 meters thick at the site, tapering off to about 3 centimeters thick at the coast of New York. People don't realize how heavy, and mostly what volcanic ash is essentially powdered glass. It falls as powdered glass. Very fluffy, snowflake-like, but powdered glass. But here's what people don't think about when they think about a volcano. If I take a ton of sand and I make a wall that's 6 foot by 6 foot, okay? So 36 square feet area, a ton of sand is only going to put 3 inches in that amount of area. Now, every 36 square feet of your roof on your house, for instance, is that made to hold a ton every 36 square feet? No, not even close. And that's at 3 inches deep, which puts you somewhere around, I don't know, maybe Tennessee, Kentucky area.
Wow.
According to their estimates of map. But if you get 3 to 4 meters of ash fall on something, it's so done. I don't care what it was.
It'll fold. Wow. I'm feeling a little smug up here in Michigan.
Good for you.
Not really. I mean, it's not going to be great here either. I'm not.
Well, okay, I've got good news as well. It's not all bad news.
All right.
I mentioned the supercomputer that the United States government built in, I don't remember what year it was, somewhere in the 80s, I think. I'm not even
Okay.
sure about it. It was in the 80s. Anyways, a while ago. And they hooked it directly to the park, and that's when the USGS, in coordination with Utah and the Corps of Engineers, started putting a lot more seismograms around the tri-state area there. Okay, and they did it for a really good reason. We took a sonogram of the baby in the belly, and here's how we did it. We put those measuring devices all over that area, and then we read quakes go through the core of the planet and through. Not the core of the planet. That's the wrong way to say it. To go through the. Okay, I'm missing a word all of a sudden. That's how very convenient. Not core, not crust, but what's in between is called the
mantle.
Mantle. Thank you.
Nice.
That resonated through the mantle of the Earth, and when a P wave, the pressure wave from any kind of a seismic event, goes through solid rock, it travels faster than when it goes through semi-liquids and semi-solids. Okay, so it causes a time shadow. So we got a three-dimensional picture by time shadow, and that supercomputer put it together, and we got a three-dimensional image out of that of what's under Yellowstone. And guess what? It's not under Yellowstone. It's under southern Idaho.
Oh.
And I'm going to say this number carefully and slowly, not so you'll grasp it better, but just so you know I'm being careful saying this number. Because I'm about to tell you the volume of the magma chamber above the plume that feeds the tiny magma chamber under Yellowstone.
Oh.
We did not know there were two of them. There is. Now, the one under Yellowstone is relatively small, but it's fed by one that is this size. 110,000 cubic miles. $110,000 cubic miles of magma under Idaho. That's what feeds Yellowstone. Another number that just can't be grasped.
It's amazing. I thought you were going to say meters. I was going to be impressed.
Yeah.
Miles is way beyond anything. I tried to imagine going down that many miles, for the z-axis. It's not there. I don't have it in my mind. That's crazy.
Ox just looked it up and said that their estimate is it would be 20 Vesuvius.
Okay.
But I don't even know what that means. Not in real terms. If you could give it to me in lady fingers, maybe I would understand that. But then it would be such a gross number that it still wouldn't make sense. Or M80s. I know what an M80 is.
Sure.
If you could give it to me an M203 grenade, if you could give it to me in something I can fathom, but then it still wouldn't make sense.
Too many. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so here's a question. This is evidence of the end times, obvious evidence of the end times for even deniers of the faith, right? Like anti-theists even, right? Or this is
I don't think one event is.
Okay.
I do not think one event is convincing to anybody. Okay.
Okay.
I don't even think, although Christians will call it confirmation, I don't think it's confirmation to the believer. Okay.
Right.
But that's the first event out of 7. Now, if all 7 events are that unlikely and that profound and that big, using up resources that cannot be replaced, and they happen in the order and magnitude described, then I think that should be convincing.
Okay.
But one event doesn't mean anything.
Right.
To me. I think I'm very, very biased, but in consideration of my bias, I think that can't be called confirmation.
That's fair. Yeah, I guess I might consider it confirmation, but that would be out of my bias. That'd be out of my desperation for confirmation.
Now don't get me wrong. I want the end of pain and suffering.
Right. Sure.
I want the ascension to come. I want profoundly nearly everyone to accept the truth when they see it and accept our ancestors' return
Right.
and ascend and live in harmony in a world that makes sense. Okay? That's what I want for people.
Right.
It doesn't mean that I want what a lot of Christians say, which is something like pulverized pumice and hot ash at 1.5 million tons per second, ultimately releasing 100,000 times the thermal energy of the atomic bombings. Yeah, there you go.
That's what Vesuvius did? That's crazy.
I think he's talking about Yellowstone.
Oh, okay.
That's an estimate of Yellowstone. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that referring to Yellowstone, Ox? I think you are. You must be.
No, it's connected to the one before, I think. Mount Vesuvius violently spewed forth.
Oh, wait, and that times 20.
Oh, man.
He is talking about Vesuvius here. And multiply that by 20, and you've got Yellowstone. Okay, I don't even know what that means. I'm sorry, Ox. I can't grasp it.
We're back in goosebump territory.
If you can grasp that, please take some hours and explain it to me sometime when you have that amount of time, because I don't get it. I don't know what that means. It's just too much. I mean, yeah. I really, my brain can't fathom what the heck that means. Right. It just sounds like insanity. That's all it sounds like.
Totally.
Okay, so looking into Yellowstone and looking into modern science and understanding the text within the reading frame I've accepted, which I did as a paper, and the first thing I read and the first thing I was given clarity of was a set of events that would explain the experience of the individual as they witness the signs of end times in our actual known solar system using materials that already exist, and that is translated by the story of David and Goliath as it's applied to our solar system. And that was the first thing I understand about any religious thing ever.
Right.
And I didn't think any of it was true. In fact, I was an anti-theist. I was very harsh about it, making a positive claim there can be no gods, plural. But I didn't know much about astrology. I didn't know much about astronomy. I didn't know much about chemistry or physics. I didn't know about Yellowstone. I didn't know much about our solar system, including that there are moons around some other planets. Didn't know that either. I didn't know the chemistry of those moons. I didn't know what would happen with a set of interactions. I didn't know I didn't know Jupiter was flammable, and I didn't know it could be ignited as a short-term star. I've learned all that since. And all of that because of the prophecy I learned. Here's some other things that I learned. That there are solar ejecta where huge amounts of plasma, sometimes outweighing this planet, pass near or around or compress our magnetosphere below the surface of the planet because it can have that much pressure, like a liquid Earth hitting our Earth, if you can even imagine that, and bigger. Now, when that happens and it depresses the magnetosphere below the atmosphere, it can energize the atmosphere. If you look up the Carrington event, where there were sunspots on the sun, and we didn't have the science, we didn't have satellites, we didn't have different ways to look at it. But Richard Christopher Carrington noted the sunspots and how they were acting and looking weird. Right. And then 3 days later, we had Aurora Borealis in Dallas, Texas, and it fried, the Carrington event fried all the telegraph system in the United States, inducing onto the wires and overcharging the acid cell batteries, causing them to explode. Like if you forced too much charge into a wet cell battery, it'll just pop. If you tried to recharge it too fast, and that's what happened. Two people died in that event because of exploding batteries. They disconnected them. They tried it with no batteries attached anywhere. It worked better than ever because the air was that juiced.
Wow.
You didn't need a battery to use telegraph.
Crazy.
Okay. Until that faded away. But that was a very hardy system compared to our computers, cell phones, coils, transducers, transformers, antennas. All of these things are coils
Satellites.
made to increase an electrical signal.
Right.
Okay, so we've got the poles flipping, the magnetosphere is weakened. We are literally 100 times weaker in protection right now than the known history of mankind on the planet. And if we got a direct solar event that hit like the Carrington event did, it would be 1,000 times more effective now than it was then. Okay?
Because of the magnification of the antenna and whatnot, you're saying?
No, not even including that. I'm not even including that in that equation. Oh. It's just our magnetosphere is that disorganized right now.
Oh, geez.
That's never mind how much better we induce electricity and try to use that in today's modern world. That's not even adding that into the equation. So what we're talking about is an energized atmosphere around the Earth, not just over some part of the Earth, and not just frying something hardy like the telegraph system, but you can bet that every coil on the planet's going to be energized.
Right.
Well, what would that mean? Ox wrote, Richard, have you ever studied pre-invasion Native American teachings? Actually, I know a little bit about a lot of them and not a lot about any of them. Okay. For instance, there's a people, and they call themselves people. There's a people who call themselves the Star Children and say that their ancestors were from the star and sometime come back to collect them back into their house, and they leave to go to that star. There's a Apache story where the people come out of the earth. You can take that two ways. And just on and on and on like that. So a little bit, but not nearly enough. And I'm afraid I'm only about 9 years old right now, Ox, and I just haven't had time. And I need about 2,000 years to study all this stuff, and I'm not going to have that time. Peace is a big deal to us. Yes. Yes, it is. The Bible and other texts talk about how we are presently ignorant and slave-like because of our ignorance, and that we are separated from those who are enlightened, and talking about the enlightenment of us. In fact, it's so funny. People look at it from a scientific point of view, and Christians try to defend the Bible's science when it's not talking about literal light in those verses at all. Like saying using the stars as signs and symbols of days and times.
Right.
Well, yeah, we use it as a calendar, and that's convenient, and we keep track of stuff like that. That's great, but that's not prophetic. That's something we've been doing. Okay. If you're going to look at it as some importance in a religious aspect, you have to look at what it would mean using those words to describe the future. But we have now found that it is true that the magnetosphere of the Earth, as part of the solar system, as part of the galaxy, while our solar system is moving upward through the plane of the galaxy, and when it crosses the plane or equator of the galaxy, is when this happens.
Wow.
And that when we cross the plane is when the magnetosphere does what it's doing now, and it has done before in the history. We've found this happened before in the history of the planet. It's not the first time. It's just the first time we were here to see it. I don't know. I could just keep going and going and going and going.
Because it goes in and out, right? It goes in and out of the plane. Isn't that right? Yeah.
Yeah. It dips below and goes above, and then dips. It's on a sine wave.
That's right. I don't know how.
Just like everything else is. Yeah. So we're crossing the galactic plane right now. The sun's going into a new solar cycle that's going to ramp up. Our magnetosphere is very, very weak. Yellowstone will never go off by itself, but is ready to trigger any moment. We found a particle in solar ejecta that penetrates the crust and loosens the the lubricant under the crust between it and the, what was that word you used a few minutes ago?
The mantle.
Mantle. So we found what Einstein was looking for, that can allow the slippage and fast movement of the crust. We found it.
I need to
by
look
the
that
way,
one up. You've mentioned that before.
The reason Einstein didn't find it is because he and his buddies were looking in the earth instead of at the sun. If they'd have looked at the sun, they would have found it too.
Cool.
I need to learn the name of that particle so I can include it.
Yeah.
Make it easier for people to find.
Particle that triggers seismic activity.
You'd be better off saying lowers the viscosity of the shadow zone or lowers the viscosity of the plastic zone.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to need a couple of days. First article's in Nature, and it's pretty in-depth.
Yeah, it's technical stuff.
Yeah.
I've had more than a couple of days to read all this stuff, yeah.
Right on. Yeah, I know. Thanks for the...
If you want to look at the most modern science, people who are assigning value to these ideas, then you look into suspicious observers, which is a large independent community with a funny spelling. And by the way, they're science guys. I know it's a stupid name. They're not suspicious, but they are observers. And by suspicious, they mean we're not mainstream science. That's what they mean by that. Okay. But they use dumb words because they're dorky smart people and they're a little bit too smart. And you'll just have to forgive them their stupid words. But it's good, hard science. Earthquake prediction model in the history of this planet. Every earthquake model has gotten 0% accuracy. Mm-hmm. Their model, based on solar activity, is getting 65% accuracy. It's the first model, and it's 65% right.
Wow.
So, yeah, it needs some work, but they're definitely onto some stuff here. But Suspicious Observer has a funny spelling. It's suspicious, classically spelled. But when you start the word observer, you use a 0, not an O. And it's a .org. It's not a .com. It's a .org. They even have a video entitled Introducing Suspicious Observers. I'd watch that one first if you're so inclined, because it'll kind of give you an overview that makes sense to somebody who's brand new to what they're doing.
Okay. I found it. I will do that. Very cool.
Yeah.
There was a lot of talk last week about sun activity, sunspots and solar flares. My wife was talking about it a little bit, my son too. And I showed them a NASA site that has a really good imaging of sort of a 360-degree view of the sun. So you've seen this, right? And it was really neat. It showed a really enormous flare, but it was going almost polar opposite from the side that we're on. It's pretty interesting.
And you'll find all of those NOAA and NASA charts they compile it every day.
Okay.
And do like a short moment, it's about 5 minutes show every morning on Suspicious Observers, where they talk about everything that happened in the solar system while you were asleep.
Oh, cool.
So you don't have to look everywhere for all of it. They're using other people's equipment. They're using NOAA and NASA, but they compile it every day and tell you what happened.
Very cool. Check it out.
Yeah, that's I think they call it the morning forecast or the something like that. And that's I think that's directly on Suspicious Observers every morning. And then they have a secondary site, which is called spaceweather.com, where they go into great depth and you can learn. They have so much educational material that, I don't know, you could probably never actually catch up with everything they're saying.
Oh, that's really great.
I kind of quit trying.
Well, in terms of the readiness for that event, it's probably Faraday cages, right? And I mean, there's nowhere to move, like with the Yellowstone thing. You can't get upwind of a solar flare, so you just have to be ready for the electromagnetic event,
right?
In some way.
A Faraday cage is a good start. Oh, by the way, when the military and police say that their equipment is hardened, it doesn't mean bulletproof. It means everything's wrapped in a Faraday cage and grounded.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's what they mean by hardened. They mean hardened against an EMP.
Okay.
Which an air blast of a nuclear weapon is like a junior solar event.
Right. Takes out a few square miles.
Right. A real solar event could be Earth-wide, take out everything that's not turned off or grounded or both.
Right.
Depending on what the piece of equipment is.
I mean, but batteries popping and stuff, that causes secondary crises as well. So.
Yes. I don't remember what decade it was that science was finding these things out as a potential of the planet. And the United States representatives who caught wind of this science spoke to their constituency and said, will you support me while I lobby Congress and the House to get money to put extremely large resistors at all substations across the country? And like almost every state was going to participate in this, they got turned down cold. Even though there was plenty of backing and plenty of people support and plenty of science, they got turned down cold against putting what they called stints at substations and at nuclear power plants and hydroelectric power plants and all of these things that have huge coils in them that we really depend on. Yeah. And the reasoning was not because the science was talking about a nuclear air blast. But the people who are really in the know aren't expecting a nuclear air blast at all. And you can't stop the thing that we are expecting.
Right.
It's just going to be too big. So there's no sense in wasting man hours, resources, and money to prepare for something that your preparation is not going to make a difference. Right. So they got turned down.
Wow. Ooh, that's a heavy one.
It is heavy.
Yeah.
It's a sort of thing that made me move out west. It's the sort of thing that I tell to people, encouraging them to move out west as soon as they possibly can. This is going to sound a little conspiratorial, but I think when you add it all up, there's no denying this. I live in this nation's oldest capital city.
That's right. I've been there. Santa Fe,
New Mexico. And in Santa Fe, New Mexico, the local government, well, it's not a booming town with lots of money. It's just not. Right. It's an old town, and old people come here, and they look at art and the architecture, and they take pictures and they go home. Right. Maybe they buy a little piece of art or something. I don't know. But anyway, it's not a booming town. Right now, we have more than 21 major apartment complexes going up. But our population isn't increasing. Right now, we have a brand new state-of-the-art city building for governmental offices with high security parking and entry. And I mean the state-of-the-art stuff. And they cut the downtown historic district area roads, which aren't normally allowed to be touched for any reason, to install a dedicated fiber optic phone line to that building. I watched it happen.
Wow.
They drove 14-inch pylons every 8 feet all the way around this building to create it. I watched that happen too. And they drove them down. It looks like at least 10, maybe 15 feet into the ground. Now, that is not necessary to hold up a 3-story building.
Yeah, that's weird.
So they really overbuilt a state-of-the-art building that they didn't need.
Right.
In the oldest Capitol building, or in the oldest capital city in the United States, right after Trump and the vice president and 48 out of 50 governors showed up in Santa Fe and stayed for a week.
Huh.
Watched that happen too. The place was crawling with FBI for a whole week.
I bet they were. Wow.
Like every fourth vehicle was a blacked out SUV with a 3-digit license plate. Saw it myself. Now, why would they have most of the state's representatives, the president and the vice president, in this podunk little, barely famous town out here for a week?
Yeah, I don't
and then
know.
Why would all these huge apartment buildings be springing up out of nowhere? I'm doing the math, man, and I think they know something that they're not telling.
Yeah. They're expecting people.
They're expecting a huge influx of people coming into Santa Fe, New Mexico. The economy and the art dealership and Los Alamos, and you can't justify it by what's already happened. You can't. There's no way. And I mean apartment complexes like 4 and 5 story apartment complexes, like A through D, and there's
so
like
weird.
21 of those going up right now as we speak.
Huh.
And there'll probably be more.
21. That's nuts. Santa Fe is not a huge city.
87,000 total population right now, and almost everyone has housing already.
That's right. And it's nice, low altitude. A lot of it's terracotta. It's very, very beautiful, very calming. I can't imagine how disruptive that must be to have those tall buildings. Yeah,
tall buildings going up like gangbusters all over the place.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Take away all the sunsets. That's really, it's really tragic.
Yeah, 3 and 4 story buildings that are long enough. They've got to have each level probably 20 apartments on them.
Wow.
And each one of these is like at least A through D buildings. And some of them are more than that. And there's nobody to live in them. In fact, B was doing maintenance in one of the new ones that just got completed, and said something like, we have, I think, on average, 18% of the rooms filled.
Huh.
Can't get people to move in.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, there's nobody to move in.
Right. Like, it doesn't make sense why any property developer would start building that.
Maybe they know something that I can't prove.
That's right. I mean, I got to at least allow for that, right? I don't have anything better to propose.
Possibility. Right.
We have similar strange apartment complexes coming up around here too, but supposedly it's justified by these startup tech companies that are moving in around in the area. Although, I mean, maybe that's true. I don't really know, but I don't see any like startup tech companies making the news lately. I mean, it's been the same.
Where exactly are you located?
Eastern Michigan, Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti area. So Ann Arbor is a college town.
What's your estimated ashfall?
Oh, it's on the more or on the less severe maps, it misses Michigan altogether. Let's see. This is a good one. Three inches. We're on the edge of it up here.
Okay.
It's too far north.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's still devastating. That would not be.
That might be survivable.
Yeah.
That might be survivable.
I can't speak to the durability of these buildings, but the local word about all of that construction is that it's just boondoggle and bureaucracy and wastes of money and people backing out of stuff. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I can't imagine what else they'd say. I'll tell you what they're not. I'll tell you one thing for certain. The U.S. government is not going to announce. They are not going to announce, we are expecting a Yellowstone eruption. They're never going to say that.
That's true.
Because as soon as those words were uttered by anybody of any importance in government, everybody with money would leave. But I'll tell you what the smart folks are doing, where the smart money is. The smart money is buying land so that when that stuff is done processing by nature, you have the world's best farmland, which take about 100 years.
Yeah.
But go look at Hawaii.
Right.
Like
no,
all of the United States is going to become Hawaii.
Huh. Yeah, that's true. That'll be fantastic.
You know who's doing that? Buying up land in the breadbasket? Bill Gates.
Yeah, I've heard that.
He's
Bill
not
Gates.
stupid.
Yeah. So people do know this.
There are higher level people who are, the math has been put forward for them. Okay. They've already, it's been handed to them on a silver platter. They know this stuff. Me, I saw it in the Bible and had to start digging. Nobody came to me and said, oh, hey, have you looked at it like this?
Right.
Nobody did that. I don't have that kind of power and money.
Sure. Although I would be real surprised to learn that Bill Gates understands that there's a theological implication to it.
I doubt that.
Yeah.
After all, if you believe there was a theological implication, you wouldn't buy the land.
Right. That's right.
Because you would believe you were in end times, and that only lasts 7 years.
Right.
So you're never going to see the land recover and become Hawaii.
Right. Don't bother.
Yeah, I wouldn't purchase anything right now, no matter how much money I had.
That's interesting. All right.
So I'm gonna use some keywords that people can look into.
Okay.
If you have a piece of paper, if anybody's listening, we got 4 people watching. If any of you would take a moment to grab a piece of paper, I'm going to say something that is going to lead you onto a course of study that I think is going to prove or disprove me, and it'll be easy for you. So I'm trying to make this as easy as possible. So I can show that our government is preparing in coordination with other entities under the umbrella corporation, which is Homeland Security, in order to accomplish certain things like save our butts. And it must be in preparation for a national disaster, something really huge, something that no weather event would ever do, no other military could ever hope to accomplish. It's got to be bigger than that. And I'm going to start you on this course of study, which is really pretty easy and simple to find, with a set of alphanumeric. And here's the set. FM, as in Foxtrot Mike or film maker. 3, that's the third digit, tree. Dot tree 9, 3 9er. Dot 40. Now, what you're going to find at FM 3.39.40 is a field manual. That's what the FM stands for. It's a military manual. You can find it on military websites, so you can know that it's real. You can find it at us.army.com. You can look up on us.army.com or us.army.mil. You can look up FM 3.39.40 on an approved site. Of course, Google will bring it right up for you. You don't have to go anywhere special. And what the name of the manual, the field manual is, that is a manual meant to be used in the field. That's not in the office, but out where it applies. The name of the manual is Internment Resettlement Facility Operations. So it's an operations manual for an internment resettlement facility. Now, you've heard them called FEMA camps. If you look up FEMA camps, you find paranoia and stupidity. But if you look up FM 3.39.40, you find the real deal, the actual manual. It's a PDF. You can read it at your leisure. And then they're not going to track you for it because all kinds of humans have already read it and more will. Okay. But they've made it available to the public free of charge. Gosh, Jesus is Lord. You're talking about the election. We're talking about the end of the planet. Come on, man. Okay, so look up internment resettlement facility operations. Now I want to talk about the words, just so you know I'm not freaking out, and I don't think you should either. The word internment means held in prison without charges. That's what that means. The term resettlement means move you someplace you can live. So the plan is to hold you without charges, then move you someplace where you can live. Now you can see that by looking, if you look into this enough, I'm sorry, I don't have a number memorized to tell you right now on this part of it. The U.S. government has completed contracts with Argentina, Australia, and New Zealand, where those countries dedicated huge plots of land to make huge amounts of slum housing and not let their people live in them, and the U.S. pays for that. There's your resettlements. Argentina, Australia, and New Zealand. You'll notice all three of those are south of the equator.
Right.
That's because 99% of particulate matter generated in a given hemisphere stay in that hemisphere of origin per year. Because of the Coriolis effect at the equator, where wind is always moving faster, pushing air away from itself.
Oh, all right.
That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the places we're renting property are all south of the equator. You can look into all that stuff. It is
so wild.
If you go to FEMA.gov or US.military.us.mil or any of those places that are now interconnected underneath of the umbrella called Homeland Security. Yeah, you can find job listings for working in a FEMA camp and an internment resettlement facility operations specialist. You can get a job. And they were hiring really, really rapidly for about 5 years. And now they've really weaned it off and they're just doing maintenance hiring. Now, an internment facility field specialist does not need 6 years of training. But when you establish a new force, you do need to weed people out and figure out who's going to stay and who fits in and who don't. And because of that, you're going to have some rehiring. You're going to have to hire more people than what you actually needed. But that doesn't take 20 years to do.
Right.
So it's apparent to me that since it's harder now to get that job than it was originally, that they've got to the maintenance point where they're just maintaining the force.
Sure.
But that's a position where they don't need 10 years of training. So it's obvious to me in that logic that they think that they're going to need those people within the next 10 years. Now that ought to set your pants on fire. That little bit of information right there.
Yeah, that's pretty intense. I'm scrambling to think of an alternate explanation for that, but that
it's obvious they're preparing, and you know what? I thank God.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that our government's benevolent in any way.
Sure.
But if you want to govern someone, you need someone to govern. Trust me, these people do not want a factory job in China.
Right.
And that would be their alternative if they let all their people die. So there's a plan to save us. Good. Is it selfish of them to do? I don't care.
Right.
Is it beautiful and benevolent and humanitarian? Well, probably not, but they want to govern somebody.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's better than the alternative.
Yeah, you have Congress standing in the unemployment line. I mean, come on, man. What are they going to do?
I'd feel so badly for them.
That'd be horrible. A little bit of turnabout would be fair play, though, wouldn't it? So instead, what they've done is three companies just popped up out of nowhere, making huge crustal boring machines. And they popped up and they sold, I don't know how many to how many different entities for how long, but they popped up out of nowhere with these huge crustal boring machines, and then just as quickly died into oblivion. And the U.S. military and the U.S. government started boring into the crust of the United States. And there are underground bunkers owned by our government. And if you look at truckers talking about hauling resources in and supplies into those places, you'll hear stories of them driving under the earth for 15, 20 miles and more.
Right.
And on sometimes multiple lane, so many turnoffs.
Yeah.
Huge structures like cities
when
underground.
Did that start? Did that start in the 70s?
That started the same time that they retired that computer and made it blue cloud.
Oh.
That's when they started doing it, is right after it gave an answer.
Huh. Okay. There it goes.
When that supercomputer, it's now the world's third largest supercomputer, it's not famous anymore. When it gave an answer, they turned it over to, they got their answer they wanted, whatever that was. I think I can extrapolate what the question would be, because where they put it, what they hooked it to, what information they fed it, and when they retired it and how they reacted.
Right.
I think the question was obviously, when will Yellowstone erupt?
Right. When?
It gave an answer. They've been acting on it ever since. This is why Homeland Security exists. This is why Jade Helm happened. This is why they built prisons all over the United States, put no prisoners in them. This is why we're renting property in 3 different countries. If you have a better explanation, I'll hear it.
Yeah, no, that all fits. I don't. Yeah. Whew. All right, well.
And yes, I read all of that in the Bible, and yes, it's all plausible, and yes, the world's actually reacting to it.
And we have 5 more to talk about.
5 more what?
signs, right? 5 more thunders.
Oh.
We've only talked about 2.
You know, we've only talked about 1.
Oh.
There's still the Blood Sea. There's still Wormwood. There's still the smiting of the thirds. There's still the face of God. There's still the arrival of heaven, or the arrival of God, and the face of angels. There's all that to be spoken. There's 7 total, as you said.
I got you then. The solar flare triggers the Yellowstone eruption, so it's one event.
That's one event, yeah.
It will feel like all one thing anyway. Everything.
Well, you can't see. The human eye can't see plasma traveling through space. You can't see that with the eye. You need special cameras that sense radio waves and stuff like that you can't see. We have those cameras, by the way. Well, they're going to have to shut them off.
Right.
To preserve them.
Right.
If you're very, very interested in anything that I've said today, and you'd like to know when that solar event is going to happen, having somewhere between 16 and 30 hours of notice to react, which, by the way, that's enough time to drive out of the ash bed.
Right.
Just so you know that. In 16 hours, you could drive out of the ash bed. You could abandon your house, take your family, and save them. With the smallest amount of notice that you'll have. For a very, very small fee. No, I'm not paid for saying this.
Okay.
You could download an app that talks to your phone through suspiciousobservers.org. They have an app. And when they see that thing coming, even if it's 2:00 in the morning, you'll get an alert.
Oh, that's
and they've
fantastic.
got people watching that 24/7.
I'm definitely going to get that.
It's a couple bucks, but I don't know. Yeah. I think it's worth it. Maybe not everybody will think it's worth it. let's see, CEO of Homeland Security. He's my senator, has an office near me, and hates it when I call him derogatory terms, expletives.
Interesting.
Harmonica Man tells stories of experiences he's had an unusual life. I'll put it that way. And met a lot of unusual people. We're over an hour now. I would do a continuation of this where we go into more detail about Yellowstone and the preparation and the need for an arms grab. That's no accident or coincidence. Or we could move on to the next event within the 7 series of End Times, the Announcing Miracles. By the way, they're not miraculous nor magical. Right. Not in any way. The miraculous part is that we were told about them before they happen. That's the miraculous part.
Very cool. I think we should, wow, I don't know. We could go either way. Those are both compelling directions for me.
Yeah. Well, we should just have to try to do all of it then.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Mac, I want to thank you so much for your time. And I cannot tell you the privilege I feel that I have here. I really can't express that. In fact, if I talk about it too much, I get misty and I start crying, and you don't want to see a grown, the beard and everything. It doesn't look sexy. It does not look sexy. I'm telling you, it doesn't work for me.
Well, Richard, I don't know how, if I could just gush a little too, I don't know how the rest of this community feels about you, but you've been an enormous impact to me. Our relationship has been, it almost feels like a realigning for me with what's important and with what's real. And you're still, I mean, I'm not there, I'm not there, but you're gnawing at this perception for me. And it's really generative of a lot of blessings. So, I can't say that without it sounding euphemistic, but I don't mean it to be euphemistic. My life is improving from, at least at the same time as interacting with you. So thank you for your time as well. Yeah. So it's awesome. I always look forward to our talks, and
I enjoy them a lot too. And not for my personal biases. Look, I believe what I'm saying.
I know you do. And
I don't have faith in it. I have hope that it is true. I am thoroughly convinced it's true. And everything that I'm saying about this, I can back it up with text, and after that definitions, and after that etymology, and after that physics, and after that logic, and after that predictive power. Because it's prophetic. But all the potentials are there, and that's why I'm convinced it's true. So,
overwhelming evidence.
If this is true, then I have the grand, amazing, mind-shattering privilege of telling you.
Right on.
And that's how I see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, it's mutual. So thank you. And we'll do it again next week. Hopefully Steve can get his computer going again. And
I kept looking down at the backstage to see if he was back there, and he made it, but he never did make it. But I love Steve. He's a great guy. He's a good, solid brain. I'd like to, before we shut this off, thank, oddly enough, Jesus is Lord, who doesn't like me or seem to like me in any way, showed up for this show. Thank you very much for that. Harmonica Man, also Ox, and seems there was one other human being who's shown up.
The first fellow that waved, Robert Daniels.
Robert Daniels. Yeah, Robert. Interesting guy, Robert, as well. Cool. But all of them intelligent people, which I think have a lot of potential, really, truly. A lot of realization, too, but still a lot of potential left to be filled in them. Thanks again, Mac. I appreciate your time. I hope we can do this again, same bat time, same bat channel next week.
Totally. Sounds good. All right. Good night, Richard.
Good night, Mac. And to everyone else, peace and respect to you all. I want you all to know that I truly do look forward to the day that we're all great friends. Till next time.